Okay.
Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Timothy Teymonde.
Hi.
And
Thank you.
I'm sorry, what?
Hello. Sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
It's
So,
okay.
okay. Uh,
So, Timothy, I'm going to let you introduce yourself because you've got a whole different kind of take on things, what we normally do. And I think you're probably better than I am at describing what you're about to present.
okay. Well, thank you for having me on. I know this is going to be like a little bit different than what you normally do, and I appreciate it. I'm a little bit nervous about doing it for some reason today, but I'll do my best, to try to cover what we talked about on the phone the other day, which,
Yeah.
was kind of succinct and to the point. So I'll try to do it, like what we chatted about. Um, so basically, my background is, I was raised Christian, had a lot of, positive experiences in that, area. I was a medical device researcher long ago, and I had gotten very sick due to events and stress and things that a lot of people are probably faced with. And just like you had the cataract, I had a basically it uh, degenerated into a eye infection called anterior uveitis, and I was supposed to lose my eyesight. And I was doing everything I could with the doctors to try to preserve that, and it led to really what looked like a dead end. So I decided to form a charity called cureeveryone.org. And that led to looking at the root causes of various diseases, almost all the primary diseases. And in forming the charity, I actually started to gain some hope for my situation because I started to learn that there was maybe 20, 25 different bacterias and molds and parasites that were causing the majority of these diseases. Now, um, when I say causing, I'm saying that there's a link. They're called cofactors, and in some cases, the cofactors I started to believe were the primary factors. So anyway, I began to become encouraged, and I kept doing my own research on my eye infection, and eventually, that led me to learning all of the Greek terms for that section of that specialized area of medicine. And I started, not only converting it, to the Latin, but also every language, every country, everything that every country was doing in every language on that subject. And I landed on a compound in a plant that was originally from Vietnam and Korea, and basically and now in Malaysia, that basically saved my eyesight in that eye. The detachment never occurred. I was supposed to have a detachment in the rear of my eye. Um, but the reason that brings me to your show is because months later, I thought, well, I got to tell the world about this. So I was heading to a very large herbal show, okay, in California called Expo West. It's the largest herbal show, and many companies basically. I just lowered my seat accidentally. Many companies basically go there to learn about what's out there and things like that. So I thought, well, this is great. I'll do this. And so sorry about the distraction there. So basically, I'm traveling out there about a week into the trip. Um, I got this sensation in my forehead that I can only describe as a white light. And you say, well, what does a white light feel like? I don't know. Like, a lot of the people that you have on your show can't describe, certain things that they see or show or are shown. But it felt like initially like a fire hydrant of white light. It started out like a tingle. And then I learned that when I breathed out of my nose, it would literally turn on the light. And I began to understand that I could probably focus this. And then so this occurred while I was driving in a really pretty area of California. And all of a sudden, I started noticing that without me trying, it was starting to be affected as I'm driving in areas of the mountains where, and I quickly understood that I was picking up the magnetic fields. I was feeling them. And it was a wonderful sensation until I started to see that where the magnetic fields were the strongest and the most healing and enlightening and because that's consciousness at a global and a galactic scale, right? When you start to, so my whole worldview began to change. I saw everything almost immediately differently, and I felt wonderful that I had this new gift. I was like, oh my God, I hope this never goes away. This is so wonderful. You know what I mean? And then at the same time, I started to see a lot of these commercial industrial projects that were obliterating these fields in these areas, basically power plants, bridges. Okay, so to really drive that point home, I was I just wanted to stay in California for a long period of time. I wasn't geared up to stay there. I didn't have a lot of money. I put everything into the charity and just telling the world about this. And I was basically on the road, almost like a gypsy, just basically telling everybody, and going through this change, enlightenment, and this feeling which was beyond, and it still works to this day. So anyway, I was looking for a place. I didn't want to buy a hotel. I wanted to sleep in the mountains, and I'm looking for a place to go to rest. And I was near a really pretty area in California, near a park, and I decided to, I found I was basically trying to stay where I felt through this energy I was driving to, where I should stay, like a good magnetic healing area. I wanted to heal every time. Well, I wasn't even sick at that time, but I always wanted to try to do better and heal my body to bring it to a higher level, let's just say. Anyway, so I rest there, woke up feeling normal, except I heard a train going through where I was sleeping, like a vibration. And I'm like, oh my God, my third eye direct me here because this is a primary meridian that I'm on. Okay. And they put a train right underneath this line. And I'm like, I was so upset. So I was still groggy. I didn't want to get into my vehicle and just, start my day. I wanted to, something told me just hang around, figure this out. So I start literally walking down the road, and I'm walking down the road and I see this sign, and it said, underneath you is the very first rail line that went into California. And it was like a landmark. So I couldn't see the train, but it was underneath me, and it was put in that location long, long, long ago, which also tells me that, people that are in power are not good people, and they've been interfering with our healing magnetic lines of Earth. It has to be intentional. It can't be that's not intentional since the turn of the century, and probably even before that. So I found that distressing. So again, now I really did not voice this to anybody at the time, because I thought, well, nobody's going to believe me. And if I try to explain this to someone, I don't know anyone else that has expressed this gland, if you will, verbalized it. I don't know anyone but myself. I've seen pictures of it. I've seen whole cultures, showing this, but I've never seen anybody describe it. And so I stayed silent about it for a very long time. And this is the first time I've actually voiced, this feeling. It's more than a feeling; it's a physiological thing. So the next thing that happened was my whole perspective on life changed, and I wanted to understand the origins of life. Okay, and I was also starting this little company to introduce this plant to save my eyesight to others. Okay, but I didn't want to be like, say, the masses or just be like everybody else and just, start peddling a plant, and blah, 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 blah. I wanted to understand more about not only that plant, but where all plants and people and everything originates from. Okay. And of course, I know the Genesis in the Bible, and I understand, the Darwin theory and all these things. And something inside of me just was like, there's something wrong here. There's something missing, you know? So long ago, my uncle, who was nothing but love as a person, and I'm not saying he didn't yell at me or, like be stern, but he was just like, how you could just sense love in certain people, it's just a great person. Anyway, he had brought me to Africa when I was, just a little guy. And then after that on his own, he went to Russia. And so I thought to myself, let me follow in his footsteps. Let me learn about these, because my overall theory through this third eye awakening was that life originated in these super deep lakes, like Ontario, like Erie, like Lake Baikal, um, the Great Artesian Basin of Australia, Lake Vostok is our current one, and they're all shaped basically like this, kidney shape, and they all have an island on one side, and sometimes up to three islands, and it's just very, very consistent. Okay, length, width, depth. Now you could have a larger one that could be considered a bay, but the overall ratio of width to length is almost the same. Okay. Now, sometimes you might have a string of them, but still the ratio of each geological effect is the same length, width. Okay. So, and depth. So the Lake Baikal in Siberia holds 23% of all the fresh water in the world. And I thought that might be one of the first or the deepest. It just seemed like a good point to start at in my research. I had at that point sold all my physical assets in the United States. I didn't have that much. I mean, I had houses, but they all had mortgages and things like that. And it wasn't a great time economically, but I did not care. I just, liquidated everything, took whatever was left, and went on an independent research trip. And my choice was to follow my uncle's footsteps, go to Russia. But for my journey, it was going to be Lake Baikal, and I was going to go there and learn about the origins of life through that point. Okay. This eventually led to an outer body experience where I was shown things, which is what I'm leading up to. Okay. So now I go to Lake Baikal and I'm basically studying this. And what do I learn? I learned that this class of lake has a depth that always stays at the same pH level as every female placenta. So immediately, the light bulbs go on and I'm like, whoa, okay. So now every time I start to learn more and more about these lakes being basically the Genesis locations, the more it increased my faith in, the creator, but it just added more specifics, to the creation story. So I just found it very interesting. I almost didn't want to talk or think about anything else. So I learned this, and but at the same time, I'm thinking and thinking, and and by now I travel closer to Lake Baikal. I'm at a ski lodge because you got to realize all these lakes are surrounded by mountains. Okay, all the mountain tops on the outer edges are the same, almost the same height, because at one point they tapped out under the ice. That's where you get all your mesas, flat top mountains. Okay, and so you have these giant circular mountain ranges, or oval, I should say. So I'm there on a ski lodge, and I get a room. In Russia, you're supposed to share a room there, but I paid extra money just to have the room for myself. And I, spent many days without eating, and I was fasting, and I was meditating about these questions that I was having. And then every day during the afternoon, I would travel onto the ice, set up the computer, just like what we have right now. And I would make a video on what I had learned or, during my research. So during that time, I said, okay. I believe life starts here, but I need to know a little bit more. I need to know fundamentally, where's the energy coming from? How is this really happening? Where are the nuts and bolts connected to? How do they? So behind me, you'll see basically DNA in a square format. I don't know if you can see the bottom of it, but see there? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now imagine that, the top of it is a little bit square also. See that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So now imagine that this way. Okay. And the bottom is a square a little bit larger than the top. Okay. I'm trying to get my hands in there. Okay. Small square and large square. Okay. That is a prism. That is a hologram. Okay. Okay. That is a pyramid. Okay. That is what you see on the front of the dollar bill when you take that all-seeing eye out of the picture. Okay. That is the fundamental building block of the visible world that we see. Okay. Now, those pyramids can collapse. Okay. Now, if you take the pyramid, which is a hologram, and shine a light through the small top of it, okay, and have like, the old-fashioned cameras where you used to get like a negative,
Yeah.
where you can actually, see the the image as a negative of, your full color image.
Right.
So if you put that on top of the small square, okay, and shine the light on it, you would see that in 4D. You basically see that image, and be able to see through that image, around that image. 3D is like the solid where you can't see through. 4D is you can see, all through it. So you would see it in 4D. Okay. Okay. So then now what's happening is that when that prism collapses to 0 point, it stores that image. That's the null line. Okay. Okay. So that's the God line. So basically, when people have all these near-death experiences, they say, well, everything's happening in the now. That's because the image we think in the form of images. Like right now, as I'm speaking, you're trying to picture it, right? Okay, so you're not thinking in ones and zeros, you're thinking and trying to imagine it in geometrically terms. Okay. Now, your mind is completely understood by the universe itself. So all of that you're trying to picture is basically these holograms, and they're passing 0 point, and all that information is stored on that 0 point line. Okay. So now the reason, so you have two realms. You have a timeline realm, which is linear, where all these events are basically, you're out there as an explorer going into the unknown. You don't know what's in the future. Okay. You're learning and trying to understand it. Meanwhile, you have the all-knowing God line, which already always knows the future and the past and everything else in between. Okay, because all these images are stored at 0 point. That's why they call it 0 point energy, because that's all accessible energy. Okay. Energy really is the knowledge. So when they say that knowledge is power, it's true. That's really where the power comes from. See, that's why also radiation is very, very bad, because radiation, by definition, is out of sequence energy. So let me explain that, or why, I should say. So this little image that we see here behind me, which is basically the DNA as one section, of that pyramid. Now that when that collapses or when it's held tight, it's non-expressed DNA. Okay. The reason I was able to help myself with my eye was because I learned that you can have disease in an area that's compressed or not expressed. Okay. And then that means that your immune system can't get to it because it's not expressed. Okay. But I also learned that there's certain plants that express certain regions of the DNA so that you can generate an immune response. Okay. Now, with radiation in essence is disease. Okay. And I'll explain why. DNA is a perfect sequence and very complex like a song that has a very complex and very precise beginning and a very complex and very precise ending and everything else in between. Okay. Now, so you have guests on your show that talk about, high energy, low energy, and then these things in between, right? So your DNA is like that too. Okay. You also have, vacuum energy occurring within your DNA and even superconductivity. That's why you have people that can translocate and have, outer body experiences. It's very, very complicated and very interesting. Okay. So, but with radiation, and I don't mean to go out on a tangent here, but with radiation, you're basically, the way a nuclear warhead works is you have a triangle within a triangle with making extreme pressure. It's not the pressure that creates your action, but when upon the release of pressure, it makes an extreme vacuum. Okay. So now think of all these triangles that we just talked about. Okay. But it's triangle within triangle within triangle within triangle, very deep. And now all of a sudden you go all the way down very deep and you open up a triangle. Okay. You open up that information line. Okay. Boom. Okay. And the deeper you go, the bigger the event. Okay. So the more, it's not the pressure, it's again the release of pressure because everything's vacuum energy based. Okay. Because there's knowledge in the vacuum. Okay. That's why they call it vacuum energy and 0 point vacuum energy. Okay. That's also why they call it plasma, or plasma is tied into that. And I want people to understand that plasma, as far as my belief, okay, and time will tell. The little guys that hold those triangles together at the edges, those are the electrons. And at certain vacuums, these pyramids can break apart, just like a thought breaks apart, right? And transmutate into other materials, just like thoughts turn into new thoughts. Okay. And in certain realms, thoughts become solid. And like people describe on the show quite often, after they pass. Okay. So the earth can actually transmutate things into solid. Okay. And create new life. Okay. So, but what happens with the electrons is just like you're an explorer, you want to go out to the unknown and learn. Well, that's because that's a fundamental. Those electrons head outward. And that's why you have tremendous amounts of voltages on the outer perimeters of Earth. Okay. And even incomprehensible levels on the outer perimeter of the sun's corona. Okay. All right. So that's basically the fundamentals of energy and consciousness and geometry. The beautiful thing about it is you can understand everything I said better than, and understand the world that you live in better than any scientist right now currently, if I'm correct, and not have to know a lick of math. Okay. Because really what is math are basically symbols that would describe what I just showed you. Okay. We don't need to know all that little detail. We just need to know generally how things work, why they built the pyramids. They were basically trying to track this healing energy towards those points. Okay. Because you got to remember, there's something called resonance. When things are similar shape, size, and dimension, or say when you and I think a lot alike, which brought us together, right? Well, it brings energies together, So similar frequencies are tracked. So those pyramids, okay, attract, similar energy. And by the way, scientifically, a concrete point on someone who's now passed had a very strange cancer, which I question. But Paul Maramet answered all the questions of the universe, talking about what I'm talking about right now. Okay. Basically explained redshift, which is the age of the universe. Okay. And using this tesseract shape, which is basically a moving pyramid back and forth, right? That's what a tesseract is. And published it, and nobody ever has heard of it. You have to really search it out, and it gets harder to find every year, his articles. But he was a Canadian physicist that basically talked about why the universe went from the initial event, which is a black hole center, our Milky Way, to here, okay, almost instantaneously. Okay. And
What was
then
his name?
Paul Marmet, Marmet. Okay. Or Marmet, or yeah. I'm not the best on spelling, by the way. Sorry about that. But I'll check it while we're here. Just as we're chatting. Let me see here. I'll try not to
That's okay.
get through. Um, just want people to have the right spelling on that. Like I said, it gets harder to find every year because the truth is basically held by a few. Marmet
Yeah.
is the proper spelling. Marmet. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, and there was a few other people that when he was basically trying to bring this to light, Carl Sagan was going to do a documentary on it, and he made a video leading into what he was getting into, which is basically, he was describing it in his video as flat square within square within square. So small square within large square, which is basically, the hologram, and he died of the same questionable cancer that Maramat did. And so if you look at like the medical records, are like it's very strange and extremely strange that both had the same similar cancer, and they were both working on the same, you know, uh, project, which is deliver this information to the public. Now because think about this now, because if people understand, the true essence of consciousness, the fact that everything they do is stored and remembered by the universe, right?
Mhm.
And like all your guests say, we judge ourselves in our life review, right? How many people do you know that know this are going to do anything wrong because they're hurting themselves, right?
Right.
Okay. So how does this knowledge impact the world and make it a better world? I mean, it's infinite. The ripple effect is infinite. Okay. You don't need a police state if everybody's policing themselves because they understand the physics of the universe. You know. So now, I mean, there is about 7 billion movie stars on the planet right now. Every expression, thought, and action that you make is being recorded, and you're going to see it. You don't need a movie camera to and be a movie star to be a movie star. The whole world and everything in it, the whole universe is going to see you doing what you're doing right now.
I
You
think
know,
that's why NDEers come back wanting to write a book or eventually write a book. Is somehow we instinctively know that we have to have this recorded while we're here to leave it here.
right? And also, for me, the reason thank you for being, um, the broken cog that fixes the entire wheel, because you're like a black sheep. You have me on. This isn't a conventional NDE interview. You know what I mean? But you're still doing it, right? Because why? Because you had an NDE, you have a sixth sense, right? We were chatting on the phone, and I said something very simple. I just said the truth, because you said, well, what do you said to me, well, what do you want me to do? And I just said, well, the truth will resonate, because we started talking about some of the nefarious things that were going on, beyond just the understanding of what we just chatted about. And you're like, well, what can we all do about this stuff? And I said, well, the truth has a way of resonating. And as soon as I said that, I felt it click in you. Like, yeah, this is worth at least trying to get out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
and it's
and there's
beyond
probably
my mental capability, but it's not beyond others' mental capability that watch. Because I have a lot of intelligent viewers, and there's a
well,
lot of people scratching their heads trying to figure things out, and I'm scratching my head and I can only get so far, and other people can take it further, was what I think is what you're doing, because we want answers. We can't help it, we want to know
Right.
now. How does this, I call it the land of all knowing. And that's kind of think what you're talking about is being able to
Right.
access that realm. And what is that realm made of?
Right.
And who is they?
Well, that's what I was trying to basically, drive home. Basically, if you look here very closely, um, you see the pyramid on right here,
Right.
Peggy. You see how it's a flat top pyramid? Forget about the eye on top. That's
Right.
just to confuse. Okay. So see this, right? Now imagine that um this you were in the middle of this. We could see Peggy in 4D because it's a hologram. Okay. And there was like a little flat image of you up top, and there's light coming through there. And
Does that
we could
underneath
see you.
signify the water you're talking about?
Um, I never looked at that aspect of it, but it does look like water now that I look at that, which is really interesting. Yeah, that whole pyramid is sitting in water. I didn't even notice that.
I didn't either until you held it up and started talking about it. And
But
after
yeah,
what you were
this is
just
like
saying,
this
I
is
was like,
like in
that's
an
in
o this
water.
is all sitting in water.
Uh-huh.
Look at the ocean there, the water,
Yeah.
which is what creates life, which is the holographic basis of our universe, and they put it right in front of us. And it's up to us to stop being so silly and understand this is reality. Okay. This image in this dollar, that if people could understand this, makes this dollar that I'm showing on the screen worth more money than you could ever count in a million universes. Let me explain why. The oil companies make money selling us oil. Where does it come from? It comes from Mother Earth, from that fundamental. Okay, transmutation. She can make things out of the holographic 0 point information. Okay, now that same fundamental is 0 point vacuum, is basically holographic energy, which is a vacuum. Okay, and it's in front of you. It's in front of you right now. It's in front of me. Okay, so how do we make these little devices that can power every house and not have to get on this treadmill every day to buy goods and services and food? Everything be created literally out of thin air once we take command of this you know technology that God's given us, which is the fundamental technology that creates everything within uh Earth, which that she protects us from outer space. She protects us. She provides all the food, everything that we need. So trillions and trillions of dollars in assets are created by Mother Earth every day. So what's the one entity galactically, universally, that gives trillions and trillions of dollars every day? Mother Earth, right? And how does she function? It's not a molten core. It's not soft. Okay. It is a metallic hydrogen shell. Okay. That pulls a vacuum. Okay. That basically has that little tesseract, that little guy here, right? That little guy here, energetically going from there to there to there to there to there. Okay, passing 0 point. This is 0 point line. Okay, and that creates energy, but that energy is a special type of energy because it can't be harnessed, because it basically transmutation. In other words, creating materials. Basically, everything's made out of hydrogen, and that's geometric hydrogen. That's what Paul Merrimatt talked about. Basically, the tesseract precedes atomic hydrogen. Okay, so the hologram, or the thought, precedes the physical. So everything is made of hydrogen. Okay, so when I talk about the pH of Lake Baikal being the same pH as every female placenta, pH is a measurement of how much hydrogen is present at that level. Okay, so now you can understand that, because you probably didn't know what pH meant, right? Most people don't. Most people don't know what pH is. You check your pool. What's the pH level? You check if you're pregnant. What's your pH? You know what I mean? I mean, it's more to that in pregnancy, but you know what I'm saying? Like there's pH levels. The pH level is a measurement of how much hydrogen is present. Okay, so at the genesis layer of all these lakes, it's the same pH as every female placenta. Okay, and this is, and every planet is encased in metallic hydrogen because you need metallic hydrogen as a superconductor, which means that it can harness plasma. Plasma is lightning. Plasma is unharnessable. It destroys, it'll pulverize anything, but it will work perfectly harnessed through a superconductor. Superconductors have any resistance. Okay. So now that means that you have an internal core, which is light energy and consciousness, harnessed by a superconductor, right? That now, if you have zero resistance internally and externally, that means it's capable of almost infinite amounts of power, right? Which is why when our sun sends a flare or a burst that's exceeding what we can even imagine, the Earth increases the energy protected in that area, okay? Because it has that type of power source, okay? So that's a vacuum energy, circular vacuum energy core. The beauty of what I'm saying to you is that you need a superconducting shell, you need a super vacuum, and you need a material and time internally to transmutate. Okay. All of those fundamental things technologically, room temperature superconductors exist, and they've been released in the form of gold and silver by a college in India, which means that we can make these devices and put them on our tabletop today. Okay. We don't have to wait for it. Every standard machine shop can basically, that, you know, is a little bit above average, can get what I'm saying. And definitely semiconductor industry knows how to do this type of deposition to make a gold silver superconducting circle shell, because it'll be sequenced by the plasma. Okay, so all right, so now now that everybody understands energy and consciousness and how everything we do is stored, okay, I want to talk about the out of body experience I had that basically that basically I think is probably the most important thing that I've been shown, you know, by the universe directly.
Before we
And
go
okay,
there,
so
can I throw something out there
sure,
that
sure,
I
sure.
didn't want to interrupt your train of thought?
Okay.
As you're talking about this, my mind was going to something in my hair. A woman that like me, I'm negative blood. And if when I was a young woman, if I get pregnant by a positive blood man, my body rejects it like every other negative blood woman. You're talking about what is pH in the water and similar to the woman's womb. And that's an unsolved question as to why I'm a human being. Why does my body, every other negative blood woman, which only make up like 7 to 10% of the world population of negative blood people. So you say half of that are women, right? Half are men. And our body rejects, which is against nature, which is against the laws of nature, that our body sees that as a foreign object and starts to abort it. And I have found that NDEers in my little survey, so it's not like can prove this to you beyond a doubt that this is true, but in my little surveys, around 85% of all NDEers are negative blood. Okay, and we only make up 7 to 10% of the population. And you're talking about water, and you're talking about the pH level. And so I'm just wondering, is there to myself, is there some connection to what you're finding out and to what I'm kind of wondering? Is there something in the water in a female, because we have to be given a RhoGAM shot after every pregnancy to get rid of that positive blood, because if it builds up, it'll continue to kill more and more children that we carry that are positive blood. So I'm just wondering, this whole pH level thing you talk about in water, and then the earth, and then this healing. And it just seems to me like I'm sure you don't know the answer, but I'm just kind of,
What I do know, as somebody that, I'm a targeted individual. I could tell you stories where, you just would not believe the conversations, the hardships, the targeting, and everything in between that, that this body has been through physically, right? Um, in multiple countries. What I do know though is that there's a couple of things going on. People that are O and O negative, okay, are basically leaders, right? They don't need to be told what to do, just like you don't need to be told what to do, okay? Now, when you connect with, double O, okay, that's why, you got a basically a 007. You got somebody that's very strong, okay? So they don't want that kind of folk out there, okay? Now, so personally, I believe that if you're having if women are having issues and they are basically holding a leader, a future leader in their womb, that they better watch out because they're probably going to be targeted because all information and all energy types are known, okay, by you know uh let's say the evil layer, and within this world, which we're here to take care of that, right? But so now if you um are targeted and they know you're pregnant and they put a little bit of radiation on your doorknob and you're to take your hand and touch your wallet, now your wallet's infected, you touch your money, you touch your phone, now it's spread out the house, and now then you touch your mouth and your lips, and now you lick your lips, and then all of a sudden your body has to get rid of this because now it's got radiation inside, so now it's got to exhale everything in your body, and you have an instant abortion. Okay. And I believe that's what's going on more than people can imagine. Okay. And not only women that are holding special babies, okay, but leaders that are holding special information, within them, people that have good intentions that want to act positively towards something, you know what I mean? They're, in today's day and age, they do not use guns and bullets. Okay. Everything is looked at as an accident, So if you use a radiation that has pretty much, that's an alpha type radiation, we run an alpha state, right? So now, but what people don't know is alpha radiation is more toxic biologically than gamma or even plutonium. In other words, you can eat plutonium from a nuclear reactor and have a better chance of living than having the radiation that's in your smoke detector in your house, okay, which has americium in it, which is an alpha type radiation, soft radiation. That radiation is so soft that it cannot penetrate paper. If I put a piece of paper in front of it, it'll protect me from that type of radiation, okay? But if I were to ingest it or it were to touch my lips, which is a soft membrane, it would probably give me a heart attack, okay? And the problem is that anybody that has an ill will towards anybody can break open a smoke detector and put it on your doorknob. And the landfills are covered with it, and the waterways are covered with it. And who allowed this to happen? Our own Congress. The people that make these smoke detectors, they went for a congressional loophole to basically override the EPA's radiation protections, okay, so that they can put these poisonous devices in all of our houses, okay? Meanwhile, in my search to understand like the origins of life, they not only make the females that are carrying barren in many cases, but they have so-called had nuclear accidents in the central vortex of every ancient polar lake. In other words, Lake Baikal is in Siberia right now, but it was in the location as far as the overall universe on our South Pole, which right now that region is occupied by the landmass of Antarctica, which is Lake Vostok. So Lake Vostok, Baikal was in the location of where Vostok is a couple of clicks back, pole shift wise. Okay. But they've dropped nuclear rods into these locations, And that basically changes the DNA output of those locations so that the earth cannot create new life. Okay. They've done that at Lake Vostok. They've done that in the ancient polar lake in Africa, which is, I can't really pronounce, but it starts with a T. I have it here. Let me see if I can show you.
They're doing something to where Earth can't create new life.
Yeah, yeah. They dropped
Who's
nuclear.
they? We keep saying they, but
Well, when we chatted before on the phone, I explained that in the 1970s, they passed a legislation that the owners of the Federal Reserve, the people that, because it's not, the Federal Reserve is no different than me naming my company Federal Herbs. You know, it doesn't mean that the federal government owns my herbal company, just like when they name the Federal Reserve, that doesn't mean that the government owns that bank. Okay. It's a private bank. Okay. It's owned by individuals. But in 1970, okay, well, first in 1933, Woodrow Wilson signed over our ability to print money over to the private bank, the Federal Reserve. Okay. And then just to show you how grateful they were for his wonderful event towards them, they override his presidential veto to create prohibition, which was the first war in essence that was driven by the banking cartel. Okay, and that gave them license to get rid of a lot of people with power. Okay, all over, a lot of assassinations. Okay, then Woodrow Wilson died of I believe a venereal type of disease and lost his mind, in the hospital. That's how they treated him. And that's how they're going to treat everybody that thinks that they're on they're going to be treated well by this evil force. They don't treat anybody well in the end. Okay. They don't, because they're evil. Evil is evil. So that's how that's what happened with all those folks. Okay. Then in 1970, they gained more power. And then they passed legislation that allowed them to basically, a corporation is like, ABC Corporation One controls the Federal Reserve. Okay. Well, what they did was they allowed them to create many layers of corporations. Okay. And then therefore they become transparent. In other words, unknown by the public and undistinguishable. In other words, there's no mechanism to get to them. Okay. Like unexpressed DNA. They're not there. They're invisible. Okay. But they're pulling the strings, and then they name figureheads to Citibank and, this bank and this bank, and then they control those guys. Okay. But those guys aren't the true power. Okay. Then we pay our taxes. The money goes to the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve doesn't care what our books say. They don't care what our laws say. They take however much money they want. If it's 0% interest at the time, they can give a loan to their friend and not charge them any interest. Could be $1 billion. Okay. They can't be audited because if the auditor wants to audit them, the auditor is like a little peanut, and that peanut can be crushed. Okay. And they can just say to the guy that they want to crush that peanut, look, I'll give you another $1 billion, because they're just writing free money, right? And it's backed by our backs, literally. It's the only thing that makes it worth anything. And then that person either assassinates, ruins their, professional reputation, does something to disable their event, their action. During 9/11, when there was a push to audit the military section of the Federal Reserve budget. Sorry about that. The airplane, which if you believe was an airplane, and you believe that every camera on the Pentagon, the most highly secure building supposedly in the North American continent, if you believe if you believe that all those cameras did not work at that specific time, and that missile, which is really what it was, struck the accounting room of the Pentagon, out of pure coincidence, interrupting the internal audit of the black budget section of the Pentagon, okay, then if, in other words, it wasn't by mistake. These people are very sophisticated. They will literally bomb themselves to prevent auditing, okay? And over 40% of our military budget is black budget, okay? And what does that fund? That funds things like are in my background, which is true vacuum energy, okay? Now, if you don't believe that we already have vacuum energy and we already have the power of the earth harnessed, I'm going to prove to you right now that I know for a fact that we do. I'm going to prove it. They sent a probe to the sun called the Parker probe. And this is a sun dimming probe, a weather modification at a galactic scale type of a probe. It reached the sun in 45 days. 45 days. Now, we don't have any technology, jet propulsion wise, to power a probe and send it from the Earth and to reaching the sun within 45 days. Anything that's in the general public domain would take years to reach the sun. Okay, so they have this technology, they have vacuum energy, they have spaceships that can basically control gravity. Okay, because once you understand vacuum energy, then you can then you have the ability to control and create super magnetisms. Okay, superconductivity, internal environments, compression wise, energetically, you can do so much. It's almost, the possibilities are infinite. Okay, you can make every material gold. There should be no starvation. People don't have to work once you understand this type of technology, and they have this. Okay, they can make every type of food, every type of material, every type of precious metal, and everything in between. Everything the earth does. Okay, oxygen, everything. Okay, and they have it. Okay, so but instead of releasing it and helping the public, okay, and also medically using it to heal our bodies, which, by the way, we have a mutation that doesn't allow us to produce vitamin C. That needs to be corrected. That's a mutation. It's not a Darwin improvement. Okay, it's not a Darwin. It's a disease that went vertical through every race long ago. Okay, that's why we don't have hair on our bodies. We are supposed to. Okay, we wear ties because that's how the hair normally grow. That's why we like the way it looks. Okay, we're off on that. Okay, we're off medically in so many different ways. Okay, that's why very few have the third eye, the connection to the magnetic fields. Okay, because we have so much disease. Like you, I'm type O, but somehow I got through. Okay, and my story is quite extreme as far as how I got through. I was definitely supposed to be aborted. It was a miracle that I was not.
Are you
Okay,
O negative?
I don't remember if I'm O negative or positive.
Okay.
I'll find out and let you
Okay.
know. But if I was born in any different year before Roe versus Wade, I definitely wouldn't be
I was
here.
supposed to be aborted too.
Yeah. Well, that's funny. So, but I also believe that was due to love from or both of our parents. You know what I mean? And that we're supposed to do better by them, so to speak. You know what I mean? You know, and I'm not saying I don't say a harsh word, and I'm not like, oh my God, why did I do it? You know what I mean? But still, my overall compass is I'm trying to be a bulldozer in the right direction, try to improve the overall situation. You know what I mean? Um, so anyway, I had this. Did I answer your question properly as far as the
Yes. Yeah. If you want to
issue
go
with
into your
the?
OBE, that's fine. I
No,
think
I
I've
don't
got
have
time.
to. I don't have to, but I just
Okay.
want to make sure I
Okay.
got that corrected because on the other side of the coin, as far as I do a lot of things to remove radiation from my body every single day as a targeted individual, not just by surface radiation, not just because I know that there's smoke detectors that have very, very toxic radiation in them, that are in the water supply and all these different landfills, and and there's other things, and there's also cell phone radiation, things like that. So
How do you do that?
I take very, very, very high levels of kelp liquid where it's concentrated. I don't take I don't take iodine, but that's a natural iodine, you know. Um, I don't follow any instructions on anything I buy. Okay. I take as much as I can handle. Okay. and I dial that in and I go to the extreme on everything I take. Okay. And in some cases that might be down in a whole bottle that says, a few drops, but I don't recommend that to other people because I built myself up to those levels. But I want
Are
to
you
make
saying
sure
you
that
take high vitamins, a lot of
I don't
vitamins?
I don't believe in vitamins because a vitamin is basically somebody taking part of the plant and then basically in essence having an out of sequence energy. I only believe in getting all of my vitamins from the complete 100% section, not even section, book, if you will. Okay, the whole book of that plant. Okay, so I don't believe in anything pharmaceutical because they pluck a segment out of the plant, which is basically an out of sequence energy, which is basically like a radiation, because your body still has to deal with, where did this come from and where did this end energetically? Okay, which is why you have so many different side effects when you take a pharmaceutical, because pharmaceuticals 9 times out of 10 are taking a short DNA compound out of a plant because they don't have the ability to even make that little short compound, but nature does. Okay. And that was what was actually revealed to me in my out of body experience. Basically, that mechanism within nature. That's what I wanted to share. But so what I do, I have, my own product that has a lot of things in there that help remove radiations and molds and viruses and, things like that. Different plants that do that. But every single plant in the world, you can't find one that doesn't have antimicrobial, anti-mold, and anti-parasitical properties to it. Okay, which is wonderful because they all have those properties, but they all do it in a different way. So think of it as your whole forest globally, okay? And you could take pretty much all of it in one meal because the earth is a perfectly sequenced, conscious, infinite knowledge base capable of tapping into an infinite knowledge base, creating a biosphere with the oxygen, which by the way comes from the southern polar lake just during the Genesis event out of the glaciers, which are made out of oxygen clastrate. In other words, I'm off track here by what we were talking about, but that's where the oxygen comes to support the plants. It wasn't plants making oxygen. The oxygen came from the planet itself as well, and the hydrogen. So you have oxygen and hydrogen clastrate within Lake Vostok, which is and that's an event that releases the oxygen, instantly. Once the first glacier goes, they all go. Okay.
I'm just sitting here picturing all the animals in the world crawling the earth, munching on the earth, eating all the plants and as
They're
you're
all
talking.
perfectly in sequence. They're all perfectly designed, and the atmosphere and all the plants to support that biosphere, all perfectly integrated and known by conscious Mother Earth, which is connected to the overall conscious universe, which is God. Okay, is so you could take two pharmaceuticals and you have a major interaction. Can't take two together. Okay, you could take, and one plant is far, far, far more complex from a DNA perspective as any pharmaceutical. Okay. And you can take that much, much more complex DNA molecule and combine it by every single plant in the universe, put them all on one plate, eat them in one meal, feel like $1,000,000 because now I just got all of those different immune those fighting capacities as fighting different bacteria, viruses, and molds in me at once. Okay. And Mother Earth designed it all, and the Lord and God, so that all works with me, not against me. You see? So how are we raised? We're raised to watch Alice in Wonderland and Sleeping Beauty, and we're supposed to be afraid of the poison apple and the poison mushroom and all that kind of stuff. That's the end game of these Disney things, and they work. You walk out of there, oh my God, I can't eat a mushroom, I can't eat plants. You know what I mean? The poison at this point, so people don't realize that, if you drink enough water, yeah, you can get poisoned. Your blood will thin out so much that you can't support yourself. Okay, you can't get enough oxygen to your muscles, your brain, you could die. Okay, so yeah, there's a limit and everything. And I don't want to say about my earlier remark that I go extreme. I said I go extreme to my capacities, and I build up to those things. Okay, but I have, never had a bad experience walking in the woods and eating any of the berries, even, you know, ones that quote unquote they say I shouldn't eat. Okay. I've done it all. Um, I the other day I ate puke weed, which was something that the Indians used to smoke and eat all the time. And I puked, right? But the second time I had it, I felt like, wow, this stuff is really great. So it had gotten out of me what didn't belong in me. You know what I mean? Which is another thing. People do not realize that they're sick to begin with, you know, and that if they eat something, the most healthy thing in the world they're going to eat, then they're going to find out how sick they are. You know what I mean? And then you got to back these things out slowly, you know? So I'm not giving medical advice or anything like that. I'm just saying that, these are the things that led me to where I was able to have a functional third eye and then have these insights, which didn't come from me. They come from the world, the universe, the all-knowing God that wants us to know, provided we're going to use that information in the right way, which is to share it and to help others. You know what I mean? So, are we
You're fine.
all hearts clear, so to speak, everything okay.
Yes.
So then okay, so all of this basically accumulated to me also understanding polar shift and the fact that our oxygen levels on Earth were dropping, that the sun was basically being dimmed, that they're blocking our sun with the chemical trails, and they're dropping in nuclear bombs underneath the ground. And they're likely coming through events that cascaded from 9/11, which is basically Iran giving nuclear bombs without serial numbers to these black budget contractors that again are being financed by this invisible Federal Reserve that we have and other private entities globally and private global banks, and basically to cool the earth. Okay. And cooling the earth minimizes the oxygen release from natural glacier ice. Okay. Glacier oxygen concentrate, which is also known as sky ice because it creates our sky. Okay. This, and so what they did was, again, not just like on the dollar bill, like here's, the pyramid showing us the essence of the universe, basically fundamental building block. They named American and Delta variant because the two islands in Antarctica, and Antarctica is why the oxygen levels are lower, okay, which I'm going to get at. They named the new variants after these islands because the disease is being caused by the lowering of the global oxygen levels. Okay. So if you're carrying any mold in your system, which we all are, we all have myoplasmas in them, probably I don't, there may be some people that aren't carrying any of it. Like I shouldn't say that we all are, but okay. But it's more prevalent than people could possibly imagine. Okay. Because it's in the food supply, because it's in the saliva of the leafhopper insect and many other insects. Okay. And these are weaponized insects that weaponize our crops against us. Okay. Which decrease our ability to metabolize oxygen because we have these myoplasmas, mold, that's the prefix that comes into our food supply. So you may be somebody that has a private garden and is very healthy and didn't expose to all the stuff, but for the majority of us, we're exposed. Okay.
What's going on with the eggs? Any thoughts on that?
Well, most of these genetically modified diseases, a lot of them they use eggs to basically cultivate these diseases, at least at some stage. Okay. So I believe that they know that the graphs are going to be off the chart as far as blood clots. Okay. Because of the vaccinations, right? So they've got to be brainstorming how do we reduce these incidences of blood clots. Okay. So the way they can do that is by forcing people to take less things that cause the blood clot itself. And the way you would do that would be, okay, Well, if we reduce the number of eggs that people are eating and put some little bit of fear in that sector, then they're going to eat less eggs, and they'll get a little bit fewer. We'll get a little bit. We'll drop the death toll a little bit, okay, and they'll never put two and two together as far as the death toll from the virus, because now we just increased the longevity a little bit by adjusting their diet by saying we can't buy or afford eggs. You see what I'm
Eggs
saying?
normally cause blood clots?
Well, eggs are higher in cholesterol, okay, and they're a very rich food, okay. And I'm not saying that they cause the blood clots or anything like that. I'm saying that when, for example, I'm just saying a lot of different vaccinations use egg and egg yolk to to uh to grow their cultures. Okay. So since that's in the sauce, so to speak, okay, that having that catalyst in your diet, in essence, can catalyze some of the diseases that are built into that vaccination. Okay. I'm not saying that eggs from nature without man-made disease should cause any negative harm, any negative at all. No, no. I'm saying, but because of what's been done by man, I personally believe that they're just trying to manipulate the grass, okay, through because they know that they can control the news. They know that they control the narrative, but what they can't control is the statistics. And if those statistics keep climbing, it becomes insurmountable for them. You know what I mean? So I believe that they can control the food supply. They have it set up so there's just a few entities that are the mass producers. That's why it is that way. So they can basically rein them in. You know what I mean? Say, hey, listen, make less of this because we want to basically, we don't want our charts to keep going the way they're going. And this will help a little bit. That's what I think is going on. I don't know. I'm just using common sense on that. Okay. But we'll see. You know what I mean? I'm sure other scientists can add a lot more detail, as far as that goes. But anyhow, so I'm sitting here and kind of like this conversation, want to know more about the subject that we're discussing, especially oxygen levels on Earth, especially water levels, ocean levels are rising, especially the who, what, where, and why to those types of things, because that is basically going to lead to total global extinction. Okay, because that's the end game here, I believe. So I wanted to understand this, and I go to sleep, and I'm wanting to understand this. I'm, imploring. I'm imploring. I'm just trying. I'm basically petitioning to the universe to know. You know what I mean? And so I go to sleep, and I'm having a dream, and I'm underwater, and I can't breathe, and I just wanted to come up and get a gasp of air. But there was an entity behind me in my shoulder, and they were like, no, just keep going. But it was an authoritative person, but I felt that they were like good and loving, and I was like, I just felt like, okay, I'm gonna suck it up. I'm gonna keep going. So I kept going, and once I breathed the water in, I don't know if I died in my sleep for a split second. I don't know what happened, but the second that happened, my mind was in the center of the vortex of Lake Vostok, which is the southern pole, and in the water, and it was huge. It was like large in diameter, like a large sinkhole that went straight down, and I'm in the middle of it, and the water is just swirling around like this, and the colors were like orange and reddish and bluish and greenish, but translucent, but pastelish, really, like, and always changing. And it was just like, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, you know, and I was like, I'm like, wow, I can actually see what I always wanted to see. Like that's where, because I believe that's where they create the DNA, and that's what I wanted to. That's why I went to Siberia. That's what I was studying, and then and now I could see it. I just wanted to stay there and try to you know, see more, and more detail. but I wasn't allowed. Boom! I was only like there a short time, and then I was shown, man, and not good. The energy changed from like a high vibration and like almost like I don't know, like I don't want to say like a heavenly aspect, but almost like the most beautiful aspect of Earth that you could imagine. You know what I mean? Like it just was so like, and then all of a sudden it got dark, and I saw, and it was almost like a giant separation between the dream. You know, like okay, no, now we're going to show you this. You know what I mean? Like a whole different book, like you were saying, book. And I was shown that man was tunneling laterally into this primary vortex, not in one location, but two locations. Okay. So I was like, who would be that awful? This is the womb of Earth currently. This is like, this is where life is created. Who would potentially even think of doing something like this? I'm like, this is terrible. So, so I woke up and I was like, I got to check this out. So I get my phone out, and I see that the glacier push, because what creates the glaciers isn't rainfall. It's this spring, this vortex, and that's why it's infused with oxygen, because that's where the oxygen rate comes from. I'll try to use the feature that my that I have up here, but I technically I don't want to slow the interview down, but I'll show you at the end. But anyway, um, um, so I checked it out. So now I was given this information. I'm like, okay, so nothing like that had ever happened before where I was ever shown anything or spoken to like over the shoulder and shown this and then shown some negative things were being assaulted against, the earth. And I said, okay, I got to check it out. And so I'm looking at the data points and they lined up with what I was shown. And so I was shown that what I was shown was basically that water would be coming straight into the Southern Ocean, right? It's called the Southern Ocean there, not the Atlantic. And all the salt levels in the ocean, especially like even reading in Australia and even North America now, are less because the fresh water from the spring, the primary spring, is going straight to the ocean. So saltinity levels are dropping. Okay, which is throwing off all the entire balance of all the oceans. So that's why I have this massive die-off. But I was shown why, and the military can verify that I'm either right or wrong because they have sonar that can check. They have low frequency sonar that can check the entire planet geographically, very deep. So they could the Navy can check this with one of their submarines and if the Navy verifies that a private contractor financed by anybody, I don't care, Federal Reserve, World Bank, I don't care, or whoever's down low, pulling those strings, okay, they'll know. Okay. So, but what we do know for a fact that's measurable is that the salt levels are decreasing, which means that fresh water is coming straight into that ocean. Okay. However, it's getting there. Okay. And that the glacier push has decreased, meaning that there's a leak in essence somewhere. The glaciers aren't pushing. Okay. And also there's been reports of giant areas of glaciers in that same region that just went away. And the areas that went away were circular, like a satellite just zapped them out of existence, meaning we're never going to get that oxygen. Okay. So the writing's on the wall. I mean, all over the place. Okay. So here's the problem. Everybody's been taught to specialize. I want to be an author. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a mechanic. I want to be a carpenter. No. I'm all those things. And the more I learn about each one of those subjects, okay, and science, okay, is the more I understand the unified theory, which is the understanding of all things. And the better you understand all things, the better you understand your own little trade, because it's all connected. In other words, to perfectly understand one word and how everything affects that, speaking of that word, is to understand everything. To understand one thing perfectly is to understand everything. So we've been fooled into becoming specialists so that we don't understand the bigger picture, is what I'm trying to say. Okay. we need to understand the bigger picture. We need to expand our minds and our energies and our efforts to correct what is going on here. And you brought up the China thing, like, oh, China's going to, take us out, or anything. The China people are great, you know. They're wonderful people. The Russian people are great. I mean, I love them. I love the Chinese people. I love everybody in Europe. Okay. Everybody I meet, basically. Okay. When it's one-on-one, or just a couple of us, you know. But so the problem isn't people one-on-one, even though we're full of disease, which is making us do things that we wouldn't really ever think of doing. Believe me, you know. But we can care for each other. We can answer our questions frankly, like I tried to help you. You know what I mean? And we can get rid of this dark undertow. Okay. But we got to grab hold of the reins of the government. And those reins are going to lead down a dark hole to some very bad contractors and very bad doers. Okay. And we got to pull them out of the, dark trenches and hold them to justice. Okay. I'm not looking for revenge. I just want to stop it. You know what I mean? I just want to just look. You don't. Nobody is authorized to alter Mother Earth and the climate. Nobody's authorized except for the Lord. Okay, and we are all here to pursue our individual lives. Okay, without some draconian force, cutting literally a whole cycle of Earth short. Because if you have a cold polar shift, that oxygen class trait that I just described to you remains trapped under an artificial cold cap, ice, kilometers of ice, which is what we have right now. Okay. And when you polar shift, you get a 90% drop in insulation, meaning the atmospheric layer thins. Okay. Which brings space, which means it's very cold. So now ice that's cold gets colder, and it freezes all the way down to the bottom where that oxygen class trait is. Okay. And that fractures those cages. They're holding cages, and it marries with hydrogen, and it expands at 1,000 miles an hour. And that's the expanding ice wedge that split Pangea and created every ocean and all ocean creation events, and all are always non-oxygen producing, no atmosphere. Okay. Only 4% oxygen exists when you have an ocean creation event. Okay. Those are called Cambrian extinction events where nothing lives. Okay. So we cannot live through that. And that basically is the expanding ice wedge that created all past waters. Okay. Genesis events aren't like that. Lake Baikal stays the same size. It doesn't become an ocean. Okay. It releases the oxygen class rate because it's thawed, and that becomes our new atmosphere. And we're supposed to have 300% more oxygen per square inch than normal. And there should be no illness. And that should make everybody super strong, ready, so that pole shift, which is no matter what, it's a hard event to survive. But we're so strong and healthy that a few of us survive and the human race doesn't go extinct. Right now, the only people that can survive what they're doing, okay, is people basically are in a spaceship deep underground. Okay. And that's what they built with our money and our backs. See?
Are you saying the Federal Reserve is trying to make Earth go extinct?
I'm going to word it the way I want to word it. I'm not saying I don't like the way you worded it, but
That's what I'm gathering. So if I'm gathering it wrong,
I'm saying that for a very long period of time, okay, and before the Federal Reserve, there's been a group of very, nefarious group of very powerful people, okay, that built things that we can't even imagine, that maintained ancient knowledge. Because you have to understand that if you were to build a pyramid, you had to have understood vacuum energy, which is the essence of the core of the Earth, all the way back then, meaning they were a more advanced race than we are. as far as understanding physics and energy and consciousness. Okay. That information is possessed, owned by this group of people that is right now controlling the Federal Reserve and many other aspects of our lives. Okay.
Like they have secret information
Yes.
that they're using against us.
Yes. Basically, all the fundamentals that I've described to you, they understand in great detail and have understood it for eons. Okay. In other words, a nuclear reaction doesn't have to create radiation. Okay. You can make a vacuum energy event create a fire with what they call a fire stick. If you take a hollow stick and a rod and you put a backstop on it and you go like that and you slam it, and the backstop is adjusted so it stops it right at the end and creates a pressure and then an immediate stopping of the pressure, which creates an instant push pull like a little vacuum. That little vacuum energy event will start a fire. That's a vacuum energy event. Okay, you can theoretically make an engine run on air that way, and people have, but these technologies are squashed. Okay, the people that understand these fundamentals have understood it. Okay, basically, what I'm trying to say is, I think some very nefarious people survived the last polar shift, accumulated all of the knowledge and all of the riches, streets paved with gold, things that we can't even imagine, hoarded it, archived it. They have that knowledge, information, and power, and have been pulling the strings ever since. Okay, but they're and so, and they and these are the power. This is the power layer with no names. Okay, and then in our lifetime, we have seen the Federal Reserve petition Congress to allow this layer, this power layer, that through operatives control these banks, okay, which controls the public. Because really, who cares who writes the laws or what the laws even say if I'm writing the check? You know what I mean? So, and if I can write a check to a black budget guy and I can have a tunnel dug, or I can block your own sky, and do it through the UN, how are you going to stop me? You know? So,
I don't know if this has anything to do with what you're talking about, but when I got involved with IONS, I started realizing they had a political agenda. IONS mean International Association Near Death Studies. So I realized they had an agenda, and they still do, where they're trying to make everyone believe we are all one, will be reincarnated, that anything bad that happens to us, say rape or assault, that we planned this before we were born, so there's nothing bad. They want everyone to believe there's no such word as bad. They want to get rid of church and religion and replace it with this, we are all one, as in like we all think the same way. And if you don't, then they're really out to get you and ruin you. And it fits right into all the liberal stuff, as in there's no sin. And they talk about near-death experiences, but they want to use them as a new religion in saying that you can do anything you want to do and you're not wrong. And yeah, people are reporting these life reviews, but yet they want to take and pick and choose from the NDEs what they want to use as an agenda, like a new religion. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Well, I do see that and that's why I wanted to come on the show because I look for NDEs that talk about the future, and I very rarely, only recently I heard one NDEer talk about how God, the Lord, was never intended for Iran, Iraq, that whole situation, 9/11, to happen. Okay. Because that by 9/11 was an inside job, meaning, we planned it. We did our own internal bombings and, planting of charges and things like that, and hitting our own Pentagon and destroying, like I said, the audit rooms. But more importantly, we took out Saddam Hussein, who was the yin and the yang, keeping Iran in neutral, because they would just fight each other, and then neither country could do anything economically, um, or militarily, other than spend all their might keeping this, military war zone line moving 100 feet this way or that way. Okay. So by them taking out Saddam Hussein, now Iran didn't have to worry about keeping this ongoing war financed. Okay. Meanwhile, we, give them the ability to make a nuclear power plant. Okay. And at the same time, we give Russia all, tons of uranium, uranium one deal. Okay. And, I believe that Russia's bringing it through that uranium, as enriched uranium, through the port that they originally took out first. Okay. Because they have to have an access point, right, to get the uranium out. And they need to disrupt governments and also surveillance, safety surveillance from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission of Ukraine, so they can get these enrichment materials out. And Iran, you also need nuclear materials without serial numbers, so they put cloaking devices on the cargo ships in Iran. So why would you need a cloaking device if you're just hauling oil? And there are cloaking devices. And the reason I was attuned to this is because, anybody can do this. Just Google subterranean geonuclear detonations or induced earthquakes, which weaken the magnetic fields, which thin the atmosphere, which basically guarantee a Cambrian extinction event by that trapped oxygen collapse rate. Okay. In other words, a nuclear winter happens because it breaks apart the consciousness of Earth, the energy layers of Earth. So she can't hold space far enough. She can't keep a large cushion between us and space. The oxygen layer basically becomes very thin. That's the true reason Elon Musk's satellites fell to Earth, because literally the outer diameter changed energetically. And so if you look globally at how many subterranean geonuclear detonations that are occurring, okay, they're all over. They just had one at Lake Tonga, which is a key meridian point just before Challenger Deep, which was an extinction event also, the beginning of the Pacific, okay, similar to the Atlantic in the middle of the Gulf. But they weren't, both of these ocean creating events were not due to asteroids hitting Earth. They were due to either a near or direct collision with the sun, which basically brought Earth and all the planets far, far off the warm galactic plane. I never discussed today what the galactic plane is, but that's the north-south of our center star, which is basically the black hole. And when we Earth-wise pass that line, that's when we polar shift. So the larger government that's funding all these things is all gearing up for the polar shift event, to weaponize it, because it's more power in a destructive way. If it's kept cold, then you can even than a million trillion quadrillion gazillion nuclear bombs. Okay, you can't even imagine it. Okay, so they're making this as a weaponized type of a situation by holding Earth cold, and they're blocking the sun. That's why you never see the sun. The skies are never blue. They're thinning the atmosphere. That's why there's a drastic difference between night and day temperature wise, 30 to 40 degree swings. Okay, because at night there's no warmth at all coming from being retained by the atmospheric layer. So once you lose the sun, you get in the coldness of space. You're feeling it. Okay, and they're dimming the sun itself through the Parker probe, which was measured by Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 probes that were launched in the 1970s, because they're so far out that they can measure the outer heliosphere of our sun, and it shrunk the moment the Parker probe reached the far side of our sun.
Then what happens when we don't get enough vitamin D,
Well, vitamin D,
your hair falls out,
vitamin D, right. Which again, vitamin D, vitamin C, are, we have a lot of genetic mutation built up in our bodies, a lot of malnutrition, a lot of molds we're carrying, a lot of parasites we're carrying, and a lot of bacteria we're carrying. A lot of it is in our skin, okay? But it's not just there. It's also in our nervous system. Not almost all of the population is carrying herpes 1, which is a cold sore virus, chicken pox, which is herpes 3, okay? And herpes 4, which is Epstein-Barr, which is also staph, flesh-eating disease, and that's in the blood, okay? And many people, especially, you know, a lot of people that, I hate to say this, but we're in the military, have herpes 6 and 7, okay, which is horrific, okay? And all of these things, okay, can be addressed, but they don't give people the ability to connect the dots. And what I mean by that is you can eat a food that lowers, say, any of those levels, okay? But they don't measure it that way. They measure it by immune response. So I can eat a food that's helping me with, say, this, that, the other thing, okay? But my immune response is going to go up, okay? Now, if that, because I'm having a more of an immune response to that disease. So they're measuring antibodies, not direct titers of the actual diseases, okay? On top of that, they're not even measuring the root cause of the diseases, which are not viruses. Viruses, as far as my understanding, and I've read military weaponization articles on how they do all these things, and the way what I have read is that virus is an immune response to a lower level infection, meaning a bacteria or a mold or a parasite, that especially in the nervous system, that's generated so you get a stronger immune response, okay? But what they've done is they've engineered the initial what is called a co-infection, but you know, the initial infection, which could be a very small, very few levels of DNA, and they've turned that into, they flip just two letters, and now that what is supposed to build a large immune response doesn't build the immune response, and now you have, in essence, a disease that lays in dormancy because now your body's not, you know, generating a large
How
immune
did they
response.
flip two levers? I'm not clear.
They do that by manipulating the incoming disease. So a very, very subtle and small disease, okay, but something that your body can't clear. So now it becomes chronic and it becomes autoimmune. So just that little bit of drag, you know, and that's why, so people can still function, but they're greatly, greatly disabled. And now they have chronic fatigue. Now they have depression. They're not feeling and acting like they did when they were younger. And that's what they want, because they don't want people that are like firing all cylinders coming at them, you know, that are awake mentally and physically, that can actually put all the things together, you know? So it's by design. So autoimmune is by design, okay? And they're basically disabling. I mean, the human body is very, very sophisticated as far as fighting disease, okay? And viral internal virus is basically like an internal vaccination that's being generated from that, for that disease, as far as my understanding, okay? By flipping two letters, that's basically not happening now, okay? And now my liver has to, and my kidneys have to get rid of those proteins, because not only are they not giving me an immune response, but they're also putting unnecessary load on my kidneys and all that kind of thing. So now I have, now, you know, I'm basically overall, I'm at a higher toxicity level. I can't detox. That means I can get bags under my eyes. It means I got a lot of puffy skin because it's going to happen more as I age, unless I figure out how to counter it. You know what I mean? So that's what inflammation is all about. Okay, you basically can overload with all these proteins, which is your own internal immune response, which has been flip-flopped and used against you, so that these things can continue to be chronic and propagate. Okay, and that's what's going on.
So what do you recommend then? So,
I mean, I do a lot of different things.
I
You
mean,
know,
for the whole, everything you're talking about, like how does a person
Well, I'm not allowed to make any
combat the.
I'm not allowed to make any recommendations, you know.
Mhm.
Um, and that's the other problem. I mean, you can
But
have
even
all
the
the
part about the military, or I'm sorry, the government, like how's, a simple person
well, that's
combat,
the
because we all
well,
feel it. We all feel like our government is out to get us. We all feel it.
well, they shouldn't just feel it. It shouldn't. I mean, look, here's the problem. The Republicans and the Democrats basically, you know, put poise one against the other, okay? And then they try to get China to be the bad guy, and they try to get Russia to be the bad guy. Then the American Indians were the bad guy. Then the Spanish were the bad guys, and they're all trying to keep man against man. Okay, Muhammad Ali said it the best. He goes, "I have no beef with the North Vietnamese," you know, and he was very intelligent, you know, and they silenced him. And if you don't think you can be silenced through disease, you don't think that that type of disease can be given to somebody, you just don't understand what I'm saying.
Seems like every
Okay?
time somebody in Hollywood speaks out against this, they're dead.
They're gone. They're gone. Yeah. So like I
Suddenly
said,
they died of a quick
I know
cancer or
what
died during
that's all
surgery.
about it. Yeah, I mean, I've experienced it, you know. I mean, you got it. So, but the thing is, you know, and so they've done all that, and then they've also made it so that, you know, guys like me that, you know, maybe could, you know, speak truth to power, speak truth to the and power, meaning that, you know, I personally believe that the medical establishment is just an extension of the military industrial complex and that nuclear military, because nuclear is part of that, and that's all part of the depopulation uh, tapestry. Okay, and there's a revolving door policy that exists between the government and the pharmaceutical industry and the AMA, the the World Banking and the United Nations, and it's one big giant fraternity that 99.99% of humanity is not invited into. Okay, so um, so the only way out of the Pandora's box is a massive awakening. Okay. And yeah, you're right. It all starts with health because you can't awaken if your mind can't allow you to compress enough thoughts together to understand what's going on. And if you don't have your health, you can't protest, you can't take action, you can't shake hands with somebody, you can't get out of your own house. You know what I mean? You can't even maintain your house, you know. It's a big effort just to go out for groceries when you don't feel good, you know. And when you get there, you can't afford to buy the good stuff because you're sick and you can't work. You know, that's where they have like, so, you know, all these folks. You know, so and then at the same time, you know, people like me that want to tell everybody, you know, really things what they should do. You know, they made it so the news can tell lies legally, right? In other words, when you watch news, it's no longer news. It's basically them dictating, you know,
Agendas.
agendas, not giving any information. NASA will send you a picture. They'll never give you any details about that picture. Okay. Um, no picture will be of one picture of our atmosphere layer being this thick and then the reduction. And that'll never be covered on Good Morning America. But we'll hear about, you know, this guy that did this bad thing to this guy, which will try to get a race riot between this guy. Because if we're all fighting each other, then we're not dealing with the guy who's causing the fights, the instigator.
Yeah. And then the
Okay.
question is, why are they screening our thoughts constantly? Our bank accounts and
Right.
everything about us.
Yes. But you know what, though? They don't know when we act out of the box. I guarantee you, nobody knew that you and I were going to do this because I didn't know. And I'm glad I didn't know. And I'm glad that you just said we're doing it tomorrow. Boom. They can't plan that quick. You know what I mean? So it happened. But so you got them that can legally lie to us. Meanwhile, you can have somebody like me that's got thousands and thousands of hours into researching plants and the origins of plants and understanding, you know, how one plant can help the absorption of another plant and which ones, you know, are the strongest because they do it this way and that way and the best blends and want to tell everybody. And I can't, if I do, I'll be handcuffed for giving medical advice. You know what I mean? and that's how they keep it silenced. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So how, so which is totally illegal, because the very first thing that we have in our country is supposed to be freedom of speech. And if I can't speak freely about helping somebody else medically, which is their pursuit of happiness, and help them on their way to get a happier, better life, then what the hell did we find? Where the hell did the country's fabric go to? You know what I mean? We can't
Yeah,
do
it's like
that.
they can tell
Yeah.
lies continuously, but if we say the truth, we have
Right.
trouble.
If we say the truth, even if it's my version of the truth, okay.
Right,
Because everybody's truth is their version of the truth.
right.
Okay. But I still deserve to be heard, you know. The
Mhm.
Lord still allows me to have my own life review, you know what I mean? And see what I did wrong, you know. So what, they can't that we can't say it, to you right now on video. So, so how do I have to talk? I have to say, well, okay, if it were me, this is what I would do. I can't give you, you know what I mean? So I could say it like that. So if it were me, um, I would, you know, um, I would research Thunder God Vine, which is the longest terpenoid molecule on the face of the planet. Okay. Um, Taxol was very close to that. When the Taxol pan ran out, they bombed the road that went to the Taxol road from Afghanistan. So they basically annihilated that plant. But Thunder God Vine is basically survived somehow all of the Agent Orange that they tried to basically, do to it in a Vietnam region. Okay. Um, which also does a lot of the things genetically to the plant, which are horrible. Um, but um, but there are good growers in Malaysia, and there's a few companies. I'm involved with that product, but I don't want to, like, I don't like when people come on here and they promote their book. Like, I don't want to be promoting my herbal company. Do you know what I mean? Because then people think, well, he's here just to promote this. You know what I mean? I'm not. I just want people to get better. Um, so
They start asking questions. Yeah.
I don't even want to get my company name out. You know what I mean? I just want people to know that, they gotta the way to do it is through natural means, basically. You know, if you want to just, post information about like what just so they can get to page 2 where I give like a lot of detail on the plants that I think are wonderful. Okay, and I'm not saying that those are the only wonderful plants out there. There's more, obviously, like an infinite amount almost. Um, and some of them I have trouble even procuring. You know what I mean? But that's why I'm building my own greenhouses in Ohio, and I can't wait to get that done. But on page 2 of my website, you can list it. It's flawlessherbs.com. People could flawless, like a flawless diamond, only herbs.com. They could look at page 2,
Okay, what
and
is it?
it's flawless,
Oh,
like a
okay.
flawless diamond. Herbs, like plants, only plural.com. And
Okay.
on page 2, I list the plants that are in my formula, and I give a picture of the plant, and I explain, I put links to things that other people wrote about it. That way it's not me writing about it. You know what I'm saying? And but that what I do as far as my formulas is I look at like what's happening with the world. I look at what's happening with the molds, and I look at plant combinations that could help to counter that for not for my health, for the health of others, and I got to be careful, how I word everything, because it's a small little tiny company, but I just don't want anything to happen to it. You know what I
Right.
mean? I just want to guard it like
Yeah.
like the Lord protects me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, um, but people can learn, because I don't. So, but the key plants I would, are that are on there. Um, Tripterigium, Thunder Godvine, is one of the strongest I feel out there. Um, and if I had to say, you know, it's almost like I'd have trouble giving a strong number 2, um, because um, I want to just say that there could be numerous number twos, okay? And there could be even maybe numerous number ones, you know, in any plant formula that you're working on, or combination of plants, okay? But I think that the best thing is like when you're a kid and you say, hey, I want to have a well-balanced meal, okay? But not like we were taught to have, you know, eggs and bacon and you know, pasta and all this kind of, you know, carbs and all that. I'm saying that, you know, a plant that uses capsins, a plant that uses um terpenoids, a plant that uses um you know, even nicotine, okay? People think that nicotine in cigarettes is bad. The reason you get addicted to it is because it's one of the best and strongest bacterial and parasitical fighters, okay? It's the additives that they've put into it that really destroy everything, okay? Um, and there's plants that have natural nicotine. So all plants use these really special things that God put on the planet to fight disease in a different way, okay? So, you know, so what I have done is I basically you know, put the best combination forward that I saw fit. And I also had some assistance from my contract manufacturers, which are international, and they get data internationally, you know, from minds that could drill down on more detail that I have the physical ability to do, okay, as far as laboratory goes. And so, you know, I get assistance from that, you know, but it's an effort. It's a ongoing yearly and, you know, lifetime effort to make the product as best I can. So like speaking like this, I can speak because it's an educational conversation, you know. So there's fine lines. Like if you said like I have this medical condition and I want you to help me try to solve it, I can't have that conversation. You know, it's illegal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
so
Well,
it's
I
also,
appreciate you
yeah,
coming on. It's just like a lot of information, a lot of,
right,
you
right,
know,
right.
to
So
digest and
yeah, okay.
so,
And I do try to help as many people that come across my desk as possible. Though I make a tremendous effort.
do you
Um,
want to leave an email or just leave that, is that a website to follow us, herbs.com, if anybody wants to contact you?
um, yeah, I
It's up
mean,
to you.
you can put I have the best thing is to text message me. I get so many emails that I'll probably, you know, skip over it. I don't
Do
mind
you
the
want to leave it as if
I
anybody wants
like
to contact you to have them email me for your text message? Because I don't want you to get swarmed with text messages if you don't want them. So,
well then let's give out a different email that
okay.
I will absolutely look at.
Okay.
And it'll be Earth, EARTH, made, MADE, and as in Earth makes things, at protonmail.com. And that'll be good for everybody sending because that's an encrypted email. So if you're worrying about your own identity or, you know, what you're sending, being sensitive information, this is encrypted. Nobody will be able to have access
Now,
to
was
it.
that Earth made or
Supposedly.
make with a ED or a K?
MADE, yeah.
A D. Okay.
MADE. So Earth
Okay.
made at Proton. So it's encrypted email. So as
Okay.
long as the hosting agent of that site doesn't, you know, give the key to that email, no one should be able to access that. Okay.
Okay. All right.
The
Well,
key
thank
to that
you.
encryption code. Yeah. Um, and so, yeah. Is there anything else that you
I
want
don't
to
think so.
talk about?
We
Okay.
covered a lot of information.
Yes, I agree. I agree. I agree. So I'm
So I
good.
think it went well.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay. Okay.
Actually,
All right.
I think it was wonderful.
All
Um,
right.
I enjoyed it. Thanks. So,
All
God
right.
bless you and everything you do.
Thank you.
All
All
right.
right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.